So all the court cases in the Collins Street Bakery case against Sandy Jenkins wanted to know how he stole $17 million. I wanted to know why.
So now, please welcome the official, non-official, non-sponsor of the Savannah Bananas, but a big fan. Please welcome John Fletcher.
Well, thank you, my friend Jesse Cole, owner of the Savannah Bananas, and welcome to this week's edition of 15 on Fridays with Fletch. Today's special guest is one of Texas' most read authors. She joined Texas Monthly in 1997. She's the executive editor for Texas Monthly and has been since 2023. Her bio states that she's 31 years old, so that means she began at Texas Monthly at age 2. Her stories have included the $17 million fruitcake embezzler from Collins Street Bakery, the dance team mom who kidnapped a Kilgore Rangerette, the story of the Odessa prostitution parlor that was adapted to become The Client List, a movie. She's been a Civil War reenactor, and she also stood inside the Globe of Death, a metal sphere with motorcycles driving all around her. And she hosts the Texas Monthly podcast, TM Out Loud, where she spearheaded the 2024 true crime series, The Problem with Eric. If you want something off the beaten track, you found the right person. Please welcome the executive editor of Texas Monthly, Katy Vine. Welcome, Katy.
Thanks so much for having me.
You bet. So let's see, you've covered the fruitcake embezzler, the woman who kidnapped a Kilgore Rangerette. You've been a reenactor in the Civil War in a wool uniform in 90-degree heat, and you've stood in the middle of motorcycles racing around you. Tell us what literally gets your motor going.
There are a lot of different ways to get into a story, but yeah, I do tend to find myself in adventurous situations, I guess. I felt like as you were reading those, I was like, wow, this feels like this is your life. Just
That's it.
but yeah, I love it's always great to have participate in those scenes where there's a lot going on. And so I love con man stories. Those are fun because a lot of times the reasons why somebody commits a crime, like the Collins Street Bakery, is pretty ridiculous. Um, and I did another one where a guy, T.R. Wright, was crashing planes and setting boats on fire as part of like an insurance scam. But it turned out he was really offended that I was writing about that since he claimed to be an international arms dealer. And he's like, why is nobody talking about that? They're just I love big characters, and a lot of times big characters tend to be into eccentric things, I guess.
That's probably a
Yeah.
pretty good way. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
so you've opened up a whole lot of things. So imagine if you go to your breakfast table and there's a message to Katy from God. Here's
Yeah.
that bucket list story that you've been waiting all your life for.
Yeah.
What is it?
It's a surprise, I guess. I mean, I know that sounds like cheating, but it is. I mean, my happy places really would be like some kind of white collar crime, or at least something with a really strong engine, plus something with a really big subculture and a big character who's not afraid to um, tell me everything he or she is thinking.
Well, so since you have also written about barbecue, so
Yeah,
do you need somebody who has stolen something and then stopped at a barbecue stand
it'd be
to
amazing.
and see
It'd
if he
be
can?
just like, yes, the Venn diagram is working right there. That's yes.
That's what you want. And
It's a
then you
good
want the
plan.
guy at the barbecue stand, you want him to walk his check, right?
Yes, if you can fit brisket into any story, I'm all for it.
That's great. Well,
Brisket in all the stories. Yes.
absolutely. Well, and let's face it, Texas Monthly is a bastion of information about barbecue. I mean,
Yeah.
you've got your list that comes out, and Daniel Vaughn has that, and you've written it about
Yeah.
it. So there's something special about barbecue in Texas. So where
Definitely.
where do you like your barbecue?
Well, I have a secret place right around the corner from my house that I'm not going to tell anybody about because I don't want to have a line. But I mean, there are so many places now that I've lost track. I don't really have my finger on the pulse the way that I did when it was a much smaller scene, you know. But I know Daniel is always out there, so I just trust him with whatever he says is great right now. Is I would trust that.
Oh, I think that's a good choice.
Yeah.
The so tell us about what helps you immerse them. Tell us about the Civil War reenactment.
Oh,
You're sitting there in 90-degree heat wearing
yeah.
a wool uniform. Tell us
Yeah.
what that was like.
Hot. I remember when they said if you get shot, be sure you die under a tree in the shade because you're not allowed to move. That one was up in Jefferson. They were having a war reenactment for a battle that never existed. And so that it was just sort of funny to kind of get into that world. And some folks who are into it are really into it and want to eat the right, hardtack food and sleep in those conditions and make themselves completely miserable for a weekend and get a kick out of it. And so I wanted to see what motivated them.
Right. So tell us about the magic moments on each of several stories, like the fruitcake guy. I mean, obviously his wife wanted to be part of Corsicana society,
Yeah.
but tell us a little bit more about the your aha moment in that.
The aha moment in there was really just getting to talk to Sandy, because once a story has gotten to sentencing, which is when I got involved, most of the how he did it is already worked out by the feds. They've got it all down. They've got their spreadsheets, how much he stole, and all that kind of thing. But I could not figure out for the life of me like what. I mean, greed, yes, of course, but I think greed gets really specific, depending on the person. And in his case, he started talking about how he always felt invisible. And that was the aha moment for me. It was somebody who wanted to be seen. And it didn't matter that the stakes to somebody in Dallas may seem so low. What you want to be high society in Corsicana, what? But everybody, I think everybody in a way can relate to that, no matter if you're in a big city or small town. There's different levels of it, yes, but I think everybody has a version of that.
Yeah, I used to live in Cleburne for
Oh,
many years,
okay.
and so I understand the smaller town and
Yeah.
wanting to be able to have the sense of belonging.
Yeah.
Tell us about the aha moment with the Kilgore Rangerette
Oh.
kidnapping.
Yeah, that one, again, it was an access concern. I know that they were, of course, the director of the Rangerettes, Dana Blair, and I had been in correspondence for many years because I had written about the Rangerettes. I wrote about tryouts years ago, and I had an absolute blast visiting them, and seeing their organization and meeting Dana, knowing her. I didn't know her daughter at that time, who was the one who ended up, Dana and her daughter Alexa were abducted, but it was mostly just needing needing them to let me into their world and let me understand what it was like. And so, as much as that's an aha moment, it's the moment they said that they would talk, then I knew I had a story. Without them talking, I really didn't have it because I wouldn't know what, beyond the police reports, I just wouldn't know what it felt like for them.
So, how do you gain trust with you're obviously talking to some pretty controversial people.
Yeah.
How do you gain their trust starting out?
Yeah. I mean, again, with Dana Blair, that trust started years ago, I think. She knew I was careful in my reporting. And I know a lot of people, even now, the story that I was just working on this morning, the guy who I've now called back for the 100th time to try to nail down some of the details is like, is anybody even going to know the difference, Katy? It's like, well, I care, and we need to make sure that it's exactly right. And I think when you show that you're invested, you show that you're taking great care to make sure that they don't get to control the narrative necessarily, but they I want to make sure they know that I care about um how they're perceived, and I care that the facts are exactly right. The saying that I think the original um staff of Texas Monthly came up with in the 70s was tough, accurate, and fair, and just kind of trying to show that I can do all those things.
Well, and when you were writing about the Civil War reenactment, and
Yeah,
this is kind of a two angle perspective,
yeah,
when you talk about dedication and valor, you've
yeah,
got the dedication of these reenactors trying to be accurate, but
yeah.
then they're also reenacting the bravery and the valor of the people that actually lived that. So, what was
Right.
that?
Well, it was, I guess, to me, kind of funny because the battle never happened. So they're accurate in one way, and then fiction in another, I mean, I think that was sort of the fun with that story was um just they're creating a battle. Uh I don't know. I had mixed feelings about that because on one hand there were some people who were trying to, you know, uh tell the local kids that this was never about slavery, da da da, all those kind of things. Um and so there was that piece of it in but it was it was a lot of fun to just be with them as they uh kind of talk themselves up into war mode.
You
Yeah,
bet.
yeah,
How about the globe of death? What
yeah,
possessed you,
yeah.
and how brave did you have to be to go, all right, I'm gonna give that a shot.
Okay, so the globe of death was scary, but not nearly as scary as the thing I was supposed to do.
What was
So,
that?
the original idea, there were some folks who were in the extended family who were supposed to come up from Mexico and be in the act, and there was one act in particular where you were on the trapeze and holding on to the sides of a motorcycle on a high wire, and we were supposed to sort of go around the high wire. And I was practicing this outside of San Antonio with the family, and then word got back to my employer that maybe insurance doesn't cover this if I fall. And because there was no net for that. And so uh, we had to put a kibosh on that, but I still did the Globe of Death is scary at first, but I think the the family had done it, hundreds and hundreds of times, and I I trusted their
Wow.
skills. Yeah.
How many different story ideas are pitched to you every week?
A lot of people email me with ideas, but I almost never get my ideas from those places. I usually find ideas um in little newspaper articles or hearing something on a podcast or basically every way except somebody coming to me with a story.
Right.
I mean that almost that 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 avenue almost never proves fruitful.
Well, it's interesting. I was talking to the president of the Savannah Bananas a
Okay.
while back, and went to their game in Houston, and I said, you guys do all these innovative things, and are you kind of like Babylon Bee that made fun of things 5 years ago, then 80% of them happened? He said, we're exactly like Babylon Bee. So all these things, and so are there some offbeat publications that you go to that kind of give you some ideas?
Hmm. There are definitely some, I can't think of them off the top of my head, but I know that there are some channels that I follow or stuff that I follow on Facebook or on Instagram, sometimes on social. There are things that come across my feed that are unexpected, or I find that a lot of folks are really worked up about a particular topic that the major newspapers haven't been covering, and so that a lot of times that can be really fruitful. But there's nothing I subscribe to in particular that gives me a lot of ideas. Google alerts for certain keywords, that kind of thing.
My interview with Katy Vine from Texas Monthly was so exciting that it went longer than normal. So, therefore, we're going to have part two coming up next week. So, please look forward to my next interview with Katy Vine, the executive editor of Texas Monthly. Thank you for joining 15 on Fridays with Fletch.